Welcome to the cheat sheet video for the Nano SFI. It's a Stabber Fleet issue. I say SFI because it's a lot easier to say. But this is the cheat sheet. It's meant to be printed out and kept next to you for quick reference. Don't Alt-Tab back and forth to this. That's not what it's for. Print it out so that you have it right next to you. If you want to go all the way, by all means have it laminated if you got a laminator or something. But just print it out and keep it beside you as a quick reference. That way when you're going through space, you maybe scan something in a belt, and you say, oh, okay, that's a Brutix. Look, he's green. I can take him, and so on. I've got it color-coded. Green's for easy, yellow's for moderate, red's for hard, purple's for do not engage. So quick reference, you look, you see the color, Brutix green, let's go. Then you look over to the right side and you see the Brutix tactics. Orbit at 18K, be ready to watch out for blobs and always be ready to run away should things go bad. And then kill the drones if they're doing good damage to you. If it's an older character, it is going to be doing good damage. If it's a newer character, you're probably not going to have to worry about the drones. The reason you're orbiting instead of using your keep at is because it's much easier to kill drones while you're in an orbit with your micro warp drive on. That gets you some distance. Usually the best tactic would be to shoot the drone furthest away from you when you're trying to track it. And that way you'll be able to pop the drones really fast and then move on to the Brutix. Once you popped his drones, you can then set it back to keep at. But let's go through these tactics real quick and kind of just give you an overview of what I'm thinking so that it'll clarify it in your head what tactics I'm talking about here. So all T1 frigates, obviously I can't generalize all T1 frigates and be accurate. So in most cases with T1 frigates, you want to load the faction ammo that's best for that frigate. You can just show info on the ship and look at, what the lowest resist is. It's usually pretty easy to tell what's a shield tank and an armor tank from experience and from slot layout. More mid slots is usually a shield tank, more low slots is usually an armor tank. So you load your faction ammo and you try to shoot them as they come in or keep them at range. Most of the time with the frigate, I would probably set keep at to about 18K and try to keep at on 18K with the frigate for as long as possible. If he gets the scram, it's going to be a little bit harder to kill him, a little bit more dangerous, so you really want to pop them before they get the scram, if at all possible. Same thing's true for T2 frigates. Don't let them get in. You got to watch out for EWAR frigates. EWAR frigates may be able to damp you to where you can't lock anything, which is a problem, or ECM you out where you can't lock anything. And if you lose your offensive capability, there's a chance you lose your ability to escape as well. So be cautious, be very, very careful of EWAR frigates and EWAR anything for that matter. So T2 frigates, just manage your transversal, make sure you keep them trackable. Keep at range is great for that. Load your faction ammo and try to take them out before they get to you, or at least keep them off you for as long as possible while you're shooting them. I call that the danger zone, which you see here in the T1 and T2 destroyers, or it's Tech 1 and Tier 2, or Tier 1 and Tier 2, however you want to put that. And it's also Tech 2 destroyers too, for that matter, for sabers and Arises and all that stuff. So for both of them, it's the same. For all three of them, all T1 destroyers and all T2 destroyers, you want to keep them in the danger zone, which is the zone where you track the best. So that's usually between 15 and 25K. Really, it's even better between 15 and 20K because it's easier to hold a point in that range. And you want to load barrage, and you want to kill them. Now, with some of these Tier 2 destroyers, you have to be careful. Some of the Tier 2 destroyers out there, the Korax, the Algos, Dragoon, etc., some of them are going to be faster than you are. I think the Algos is faster. And if they're faster than you are, you're not going to be able to effectively keep at range. So that means they may get in close on you, scram you. So in that case, if you see they're faster than you, load faction ammo, because you got to be ready to take them when they come in close. If you then see that once they've tackled you, they're keeping range and you can't do good damage with your faction ammo, then you can switch to barrage. But it's better to be safe and load the faction ammo and have it should you get scrammed and get in trouble than it is to have to switch to faction ammo halfway through the fight. So pretty basic strategy there. The stabber is one of the unique tactics. I've fought stabbers before and other Nano SFIs. They're going to use the same tactic for every ship they fight. So basically, most people who fly this kind of ship are going to fly in, their only thing in their mind, in their brain. It'll never change. Every ship they fight, okay, I'm going to orbit at 18K, load barrage, and hope that my kite keeps me alive and wins me the fight. That's what they're going to do. So you want to exploit that. If you come up against a stabber or even another SFI that's nano, and you're sure it's nano, not armor, what you want to do is you want to do the opposite. You want to go in there and you want to make sure that you do the more DPS than him, and that it's harder for him to escape when things go wrong. So what you want to do is you want to approach the stabber. You want to load your faction EMP, and you want to try to stay right on top of him. Approach, not keep at, not orbit. Approach, approach, approach. Stay on top of him and just shred him as fast as possible. He won't be expecting that. He'll be expecting you to try to kite him, and for him to kite you, and you to have this little kite battle. No kite battles. Go in and gank him. Tech 1 cruisers. Be very careful with Tech 1 cruisers. They've been updated. They're much better than they used to be. They used to be kind of a joke. Now they're reasonable. So keep at 18k, take them down. Be very careful about the drone cruisers, the Arbitrator and the Thorax, or not Thorax, Arbitrator and the Vexor. Those two are going to be dangerous. I didn't elaborate here. I might have down further. No, I didn't. But with drone cruisers, you want to be careful because right now drones can do upwards of 300 DPS, 5 medium drones. So you have an Arbitrator or a Vexor putting that kind of DPS on you, even while you're kiting and avoiding their guns, you're still going to go down pretty quick. You need to either very quickly kill the drones or just not fight against any Arbitrators or Vexors. So I leave that up to you, depending on character age, depending on how isolated it is. If he's got a whole fleet, don't mess with it. But if you've got a Ratter Vexor in a belt, give it a shot. Just know you're going to have to pop the drones first, and you might have more than one flight of drones. So for all cruisers, really, other than that, except for the Thorax, we'll talk about that in a minute, you want to keep at 18k and make sure you don't get scrammed. If you get scrammed, you're in trouble, but just load faction ammo and do your best. But if you get scrammed, you're still in trouble. So you want to try to make them kind of chase you or something to see how fast they are, to confirm that you are faster than them. We already talked about the Brutics. Rookie ships, obviously easy. Mining barges, haulers, very easy. Going down, you've got assault ships. Assault ships are a real danger. They're almost in the hard area, but I don't want you to completely ignore assault ships. Assault ships vary completely based on their speed as to how dangerous they are. If an assault ship is faster than you, then it is extremely hard to kill, most likely, and you probably should not mess with it. But if an assault ship is slower than you, you can use your keep at to 18, 19k, and then use barrage, and you can effectively track him as he's chasing, trying to get closer to you to get that scram. But if he gets a scram and he gets an orbit, it's going to be incredibly hard, even with faction ammo, to kill an assault ship. So I recommend you use a lot of caution with those. The Sentinel, like the other EWAR frigs, it's dangerous, but the Sentinel is a little bit more dangerous. The Sentinel can potentially tracking disrupt you. It can potentially newt you. It can potentially point you. So if you're pointed, tracking disrupted, and neuted, you're running out of options to get away should he have a blob coming after you. Be careful with the Sentinel. But usually what I would do is load some faction ammo, probably some faction fusion or faction phase plasma, and just approach and try to burn him down really fast before he can focus on what he's doing and get all his stuff together. Now for the Thorax we were talking about earlier, I've seen a lot of Thorax setups that are going ungodly fast. I've seen some Thoraxes out there doing almost 3k a second. So obviously that's fast enough to catch you. And if he catches you and webs you and scrams you in a Thorax, you're dead. So test his speed and be ready for any ship, not just the Thorax, be ready for any ship to overload at some point during the fight their microwarp drive to get that extra boost of speed to get the point on you. If they do, you're in trouble, so always watch the velocity of your opponent. Don't get lazy, keep an eye on that velocity. Airzu, very dangerous. Same thing as Lachesis, they're both basically the same. Do not engage if they have you scrammed or if they can scram. I like to test to see if they can scram me by sitting on a gate at 0. Then while I'm on the gate at 0, I'll be orbiting at 500 or sitting still. Either way, I'll let them point me, and then I'll turn on the microwarp drive and see if it turns on. If it turns on, then they're using a disruptor. If it doesn't, they're using a scram. So that's one way you can tell. It's not 100%, but it's worked for me in the past. If they do use just a regular disruptor, you want to get in close, orbit at 1K, maybe even just approach. You want to count on being able to do more DPS than them, but you might be able to avoid some DPS out of them if you orbit at 1K with your micro-warp drive off. I don't know. It's kind of up in the air. Load fusion and kill him as fast as possible, because really it's just a race of his DPS versus yours. You have a lot more DPS output than he does. He has similar tank, maybe just a little bit more hit points than you do. So it's a race to the bottom. Same thing with Lachesis, except the Lachesis has an even better tank. So, and he has better DPS. So kill his drones first on the Lachesis, and then see, this is one I'm not so sure about here. As I say, keep at 20K. Well, some Lachesises are going to be able to do decent DPS at 20K. So I'm not so sure, but you're going to have to play that one by ear based on what you see on the field and what you see with the opponent you're facing. Pilgrims, for the Nano SFI, Pilgrim is easy because you can stay outside of his newt range. For the Armor SFI, it's a no-go. It's just do not engage. But for the Nano, you want to go ahead and engage the Pilgrim. You can kite him. You can sit. His newts are only good to 13K, maybe 15K or something like that if he loads faction newts, but no one does. So 13K is your like borderline. As long as you never go within 13K, you win. So set keep at to 18K and avoid his newts. If he puts drones on you, they are bonused, and most Pilgrims these days are using the bonus, the damage module for their drones. So that's dangerous if you want to kill the drones, and it's probably, if you have time, if it's not rushed, then you want to go ahead and orbit at 18K and pop his drones, probably 2 or 3 flights worth, before you put your DPS on him. Also a chance he has ECM drones, which is a big danger that he could ECM drone you and get away. Rapier. The Rapier is a tough one. Most Rapiers fit 2 webs and a long point disruptor. That's the typical Rapier. They'll also have some shield buffer tank, but not a huge one. So for a Rapier, you typically would want to try to find a way to start the fight up close to him. If you can't start the fight up close to him, it's just not going to work. But basically, if you can get right on top of him, and you have time, he doesn't have a fleet, then you can turn your micro-warp drive on, and even with 2 webs on you, with your micro-warp drive on, you should be able to stay pretty close to him and take him down. But that's probably not accurate, because he's still going to have a micro-warp drive. So actually that's an error, and I'm going to change that before I post this. Logistics, you rarely see logistics by itself. If you do, it's not that hard. If you see 2 logistics together, you can't kill it. Too much tank. If you see logistics like way off on the side of a fleet, you could potentially go harass that logistics and maybe kill it. Doubt it. For the most part, it's not worth messing with. But let's not do that. Logistics are pretty much a waste of time. You're not going to see many opportunities to do that anyway. Deimos, pretty easy. The Deimos you keep at 18, 19K. You kill his drones first. You'd orbit to kill his drones, then keep at, because once you go to keep at, you track better. If he's got blasters fit, he's not going to do any damage to you at that range. If he's got rails, he is going to do good damage to you, and then you probably should just run away. He's going to try to bounce you and try to get that scram, because that's his only way to win, is to get the scram. It's the same thing for the Eagle. He's going to be blaster fit most likely. If he's rail fit, you don't want to mess with him. But if he's blaster fit, keep him at 18, 19, 20K, and you should be just fine taking him out. He gets a bonus for range, so if he loads null, you might have to run. So keep an eye on your damage. All battle cruisers, again, this is a big generalization, but all battle cruisers except for the Drake, in general, are going to be range limited. So they're going to have a little bit of trouble hitting you at 18, 19, 20K, right in there. I say keep at 18K. So all battle cruisers are going to have trouble hitting you at that range, with the exception of the Drake and probably the Harbinger. If it's a good Harbinger, he'll be able to throw in Scorch and hit you, but you can always disengage. So that's the key. For most of them, you obviously want to vary based on battlecruiser, but for most of them, you'll be safe to engage if you keep at 18k and just be ready to disengage and DPS and just try it out. It doesn't hurt to try as long as you can leave. So, just maintain that out. The Drake's a little bit different. Drake can hit you most likely at whatever range you're at. Now, it used to be that almost every Drake you run into would be a heavy missile Drake. Recently that's changing, and now it's becoming more a heavy assault missile Drakes are starting to become more common. So a heavy assault missile Drake, depending on skills, there's a chance you can avoid their DPS by going out to 20, 21, 22k if they're heavy assault missiles, and just stay just outside the missile range. But it all depends on the player's skill using the heavy assault missiles. So that's something to keep in mind. But in general for the Drake, you want to orbit at 18k and just shoot at him and see if maybe he's a complete noob and he's terribly fit, and maybe you'll get lucky. But in most cases, his tank is going to be strong enough and his DPS is going to be strong enough that he's going to make you run away. It doesn't hurt to try, but be ready and be prepared to have to run away. The real thing you're really trying to do when you're attacking a Drake often is to get the Drake to call on his buddies who will have a couple frigates that you can pop. That's really what you're doing. So battleships are pretty easy except for newts. Be careful about newts. Watch out for drones. But just be ready to disengage. As long as you can disengage, you're okay. Most battleships, when you're orbiting at 18k, will not be able to hit you. If some of them do get a couple hits on you, you can lower your orbit to 15k, and that should help out to nullify their tracking. But newts are your real concern when you're fighting against a battleship. Now for the hard ships, heavy assault ships, except for the Deimos, are generally no, because most heavy assault ships are going to have some damage projection where they can hit you at range, and they're going to be so strong that up close you can't really do anything. The Huggen, if you get in close, but even with that, like I said with the Rapier, I need to change these. If a Rapier can dual web you and run his micro warp drive, and all you can do is point him, he's going to maintain range on you all day long. Same thing for the Huggen, and he's going to kill you. So that's actually an error, and I will fix that as soon as I get done. So Huggens are definitely no-go. Falcon and Rook, it's just pointless. And if they're AFK or something, sure. But for a straight-up fight, 99% of the time they're going to jam you and either win or get away. So, if they're just on the field and you want to try to run them off, get your drones on them. That's the best thing you can do, is get your drones on them, because you're going to get jammed out pretty quick, and your drones won't be jammed out. They'll stay on him, and they'll harass him enough to potentially force him off the field. Tier 3 battlecruisers, I'd say to avoid those because of how fast they are and how easy it is for them to track at 18-20k. Especially with your micro warp drive on and you chasing towards them, because you're not even orbiting. You're chasing going straight at them because you're trying to catch up with them because they're so fast. So they track you perfectly and they blow you out of the sky with a couple shots. So tier 3 battlecruisers are a no-go. The only way I would even consider taking a tier 3 battlecruiser with this setup would be if I kept maybe a warp scram in my cargo hold, went to a station and refit, switched out to the scram, and then very, very carefully, while he wasn't paying attention or wasn't expecting it, got in close and got the scram before he got too many hard hits on me. And then once I got the scram, I would have went in and orbited at 500. Probably micro warp drive off, but if he's able to track me, then I would turn the micro warp drive on and orbit at 500. And that's a way you could kill him, but again, you got to refit, and it's, chances of a perfect opportunity like that happening for you are low. Hicks, you can't do enough DPS to break them. They're almost never alone without a fleet. So, I wouldn't even mess with it unless you're trying to draw out a fleet. So you could try. The do not engage ships, the curse. Curses do not engage for so many of the ships that I make cheat sheets for. The curse is just bad. When you fly it, it's not all that bad, but when you fly against it, it's bad. It seems like I've flown the curse many times. It does fantastic against a couple targets, but against large fleets, it's terrible because you can't nuke everybody out. You can't run away from everybody. It gets very hard to maintain and to run it. It's a very intensive ship. It takes a lot of effort to maintain everything and to watch everything and cycle the nukes just right. It's a pain in the butt, but if you put a curse in a fleet, it's incredibly effective at neutralizing ships that normal fleet ships might have trouble with. So if a curse is in the fleet, he's going to nuke you at like 35, 40k, and you're cap dead, no capacitor, no micro warp drive, everything's going to catch up to you, everything's going to scram, you're going to die. Tier 3 cruisers, I hate Tier 3 cruisers. They're so hard for me to give a generalization about, oh, if it's Tengu, it's going to be fit like this. The fact is, I have no idea how the Tengu is going to be fit until I fly against it and check it out and see what speed it has, see what missiles or even weapons. God forbid some of them fit railguns or something. But you never know. So there's so many question marks there. And in general, people don't fit bad Tier 3s, but they're out there. But usually when someone flies a Tier 3, it's reasonably fit and it's reasonably expensively fit and it's hard to kill. Just leave them alone. Vagabond and Cinnabal are both the same ship as yours almost. They do exactly what you do, but they do it better. Don't engage unless you're pretty confident that they're bad players. They're not very skilled. Maybe young players. In that case, what I would do against both of them, I think, is I would probably try to get up close with high damage ammo if I was faster. And it's a tough call because it all varies. It's very dependent on what kind of setups they have and how fast they are and what kind of characters experience they have. So in general, do not engage. But if you want to push the limits, by all means, find yourself some noobs and kill them. Most faction cruisers, again, a lot of them have things that would make it difficult. It's not saying you can't. There's a lot of the faction cruisers that you could easily kite. There's some of them that, like the Gila with the drones that are a pain in the butt that I wouldn't recommend. There's the Ashimu, which you might be able to take as long as you kite. So there's, that's up to your personal opinion on those. Dominix is a no-go all over the place because Dommies almost always fit newts and Dommies are always drone bonused. Two things you don't like if you're trying to kite within their newt range. So maybe if you're kiting outside newt range, maybe kill the drones. If you've got command links and you can point at 35k, then orbit at 30k and kill his drones and then put your DPS on him. But if you're having to fight within newt range, Dommies are very well known for using newts, and I highly recommend anyone that uses them use a newt. So that's it for the Nano SFI cheat sheet. It's a general quick reference, and it'll make it so that you can fly a little bit faster and be a little bit more confident in what you fight, have a little bit more of an understanding of the tactics, and probably that's the best thing about it is as you go through and think through these tactics, they're going to give you a better understanding of tactics in general and EVE Online, which is going to make you a better pilot all across the board.